The ship dropped out of light speed with a gentle shudder. Captain Deho stood on the bridge, his hands clasped behind his back as he watched the planet grow larger on the main screen. Caro 7 looked like a blue-green jewel floating in the darkness of space. It was beautiful, but that was not why they had come. The message had reached Earth 3 months ago. An archaeological team working on Caro 7 had found something. Something big. Something that had been hidden for thousands of years. The message did not say much, but it said enough. They had found a throne. Deho turned to his crew. Yuna sat at the engineering station, her fingers dancing across the controls as she monitored the ship's systems. Jiho was at the science station, already scanning the planet below. Woojin guided the ship with steady hands, bringing them into a stable orbit. Sora stood near the back, her medical bag ready in case anyone needed it during the landing. And Hana, the diplomat from Earth, stood beside Deho, her eyes fixed on the planet below. A throne, Deho thought. After all these years of exploring space, meeting new species, discovering new worlds, they had been called here because of a chair. But it was not just any chair. The archaeological team had been very clear about that. This throne was special. This throne was old. Older than any civilization currently living in the galaxy. It belonged to the precursors, the mysterious race that had built wonders across the stars before vanishing without a trace. The landing was smooth. Woojin set the ship down on a flat stretch of rock near the excavation site. Through the windows they could see the camp. Tents and equipment spread across the valley floor. Beings from a dozen different species moved between the structures, all working together to uncover the secrets buried in the ground. As they stepped off the ship, a tall figure approached them. It had 4 arms, blue skin, and large eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. This was Kelmar, the lead archaeologist. He had been the one to send the message to Earth. "Welcome, Captain Deho," Kelmar said in the common tongue. His voice was deep and formal. "We are honored that Earth has sent representatives. Please follow me. The throne awaits." They walked through the camp. Everywhere Deho looked, he saw activity. Scientists taking measurements, workers clearing away dirt and stone, guards watching over everything. The air buzzed with excitement and tension. Everyone here knew they were standing on the edge of something important. Kelmar led them to a large opening in the ground. Stone steps descended into darkness. Lights had been strung along the walls, casting strange shadows on the ancient rock. The stairs went down for what felt like forever. Down and down, deep into the heart of the planet. Finally, they reached the bottom. The stairs opened into a chamber so vast that the lights could not reach the far walls. The ceiling disappeared into shadows high above. But none of that mattered, because in the center of the chamber, bathed in portable lights brought by the archaeologists, sat the throne. It was made of crystal. Not glass, not diamond, but something else. Something that seemed to hold light inside it without glowing. The throne was large, big enough for any species to sit in comfortably. Its surface was covered in patterns that hurt to look at for too long. Patterns that seemed to move when you were not looking directly at them. "Beautiful," Hana whispered beside him. "Beautiful and useless," Kelmar said. He gestured around the chamber. "Do you see these marks on the floor? Each one represents an attempt to activate the throne. We have records going back 5,000 years. Hundreds of species, thousands of individuals. All have tried to claim the throne. All have failed." Jiho knelt down to examine the floor more closely. The marks Kelmar mentioned were everywhere. Some looked like scorch marks. Others looked like they had been burned into the stone by cold instead of heat. A few looked like nothing natural at all. "What happens when someone tries?" Jiho asked. "Nothing," Kelmar replied. "That is the problem. The throne simply does not respond. It sits there dark and silent, as if waiting for something we cannot provide." Around the chamber, Jiho noticed other beings. Representatives from different worlds all gathered to witness whatever might happen. He recognized a few species. The tall mantis-like Keltorians, the floating gaseous Ven, the rock-skinned Durathi. All of them were here, all of them waiting. According to the legends, Kelmar continued, walking slowly around the throne. This throne was left by the precursors as a test. Only the true heir can awaken its power. But we do not know what that means. Heir to what? What power? The precursors left no instructions, no guide. Just this throne and the promise that it holds great knowledge. As they stood there watching the throne, Deho felt a strange feeling in his chest. It was not fear exactly. It was more like standing on the edge of a cliff, knowing that one step forward would change everything. He had felt this way before, years ago, when he had first left Earth to explore the stars. That feeling of being small in the face of something vast and unknowable. "Can we get closer?" Yuna asked. She had her scanner out, taking readings. Kelmar nodded. "Of course, you may approach. You may even touch it if you wish. Many have. The throne does not object to being examined. It simply refuses to wake." They walked closer as a group. Up close, the throne was even more impressive. The crystal it was made from was absolutely flawless, not a single crack or imperfection, and the patterns carved into its surface were incredibly complex. Yuna ran her scanner over it while Jiho took notes on his datapad. Hana reached out slowly and placed her hand on the armrest. The crystal was cool to the touch, smooth. It felt alive somehow, though that was impossible. She stood there for a long moment, her hand resting on the ancient artifact, feeling nothing but cold stone. The chamber was silent except for the quiet sounds of people moving and working. Everyone seemed to be waiting for something to happen. But nothing did. The throne remained dark. The patterns on its surface did not glow. The chamber did not shake. Nothing changed. "Tomorrow," Kelmar said, breaking the silence, "the formal trials will begin. Representatives from each species will attempt to activate the throne, using their traditional methods. Perhaps one of them will succeed. Perhaps not. But we must try. The knowledge contained within this throne could change everything we know about the universe." As they walked back through the chamber toward the stairs, Deho looked back at the throne one more time. It sat there in the darkness, patient and still as it had for thousands of years. Waiting. Always waiting. He wondered what it was waiting for. And he wondered if anyone would ever find out. The next morning arrived with a strange energy in the camp. Hana woke early, unable to sleep. Her small quarters on the ship felt too cramped, too confining. She dressed quickly and made her way back down to the chamber. The camp was already busy. Delegates from across the galaxy had arrived overnight. Their ships dotted the valley like strange metal flowers. Some were elegant and streamlined. Others were blocky and practical. A few looked like they should not be able to fly at all, but somehow did. Inside the chamber, the transformation was remarkable. The archaeologists had set up more lights. They had brought in seating for the observers. A path had been cleared from the stairs to the throne, marked with ropes to keep people at a safe distance. Everything looked official now, important. Hana found a spot near the back where she could watch without being in the way. Deho and the others were somewhere in the crowd. She could see Yuna setting up equipment to record everything. Jiho was taking more scans, his face intense with concentration. This was what they had come for. This was the moment everyone had been waiting for. The first delegate to approach was a Keltorian elder. He was tall, taller than any human, with green skin that seemed to shimmer in the lights. He wore elaborate robes covered in symbols. In his 4 hands he carried various objects, crystals, metallic rods, things Hana did not recognize. The Keltorian began his ritual. He moved in a circle around the throne, chanting in his native language. The words echoed through the chamber, deep and resonant. He placed his objects on the ground in specific patterns. He made gestures with his hands that looked like they meant something important. For 30 minutes, the Keltorian performed his ceremony. Everyone watched in silence. When he finally finished and stepped back, nothing had changed. The throne remained dark. The Keltorian bowed his head in disappointment and walked away. Next came a Ven representative. The Ven were beings of pure gas, held together by technology that nobody fully understood. This one glowed a soft purple color as it floated toward the throne. It released clouds of different gases around the throne, each one a different color. Red, blue, green, yellow. The gases swirled and mixed in the air. The Ven sang. That was the only way Hana could describe it. A sound like wind chimes in a storm. Beautiful and eerie at the same time. The song went on for what felt like hours but was probably only 20 minutes. When the Ven finished and drifted away, the throne was still dark. One by one, the delegates took their turns. The Durathi brought fire and stone. The Selkari brought ice and water. The Norvani brought living plants that glowed in the darkness. Each species performed their traditional rites. Each one believed they might be the one to awaken the throne, and each one failed. After the 5th attempt, Hana found her attention starting to wander. She felt guilty about it. This was important. This was history, but the rituals were all starting to blend together. The chanting, the objects, the elaborate gestures. None of it seemed to make any difference. She began to look around the chamber instead. Really look at it, not just at the throne. The walls were covered in markings, not writing exactly, more like pictures, symbols. She could not read them, but they seemed to tell a story. Quietly, trying not to disturb anyone, Hana moved along the back of the chamber. She followed the markings on the wall, studying them. Some showed figures that might have been the precursors. Others showed stars and planets, ships traveling through space, buildings rising from empty ground. One section of the wall particularly caught her attention. It showed figures standing together, not one species but many, all different shapes and sizes. And they were building something together. Not fighting, not competing, working as one. Below this scene, carved into the floor, were more symbols. Hana knelt down to look at them more closely. They formed patterns, spirals and circles that connected to each other in complex ways. And in the center of each pattern was the same symbol repeated over and over. It looked almost like a hand reaching out, or maybe a hand reaching up, hope, Hana thought. That was what the symbol felt like. Hope. She traced the patterns with her fingers, following them across the floor. They led her in a winding path around the chamber. Sometimes they were obvious, carved deep into the stone. Other times they were so faint she could barely see them. But they were always there, connecting every part of the room. Human history was full of hope. Hana knew that better than most. She had studied history before becoming a diplomat. Earth had been through dark times, wars, disasters, moments when it seemed like humanity might not survive. But they always had. Not because they were stronger than their problems. Not because they were smarter, but because they never stopped hoping that tomorrow could be better. When the first starships had launched from Earth, people said it was impossible. When humans met their first alien species, people said communication would be impossible. When Earth joined the galactic community, people said humans would never fit in. But they had done all of those things. Not perfectly, not without mistakes, but they had done them. Behind her, another delegate was performing another ritual. Hana glanced back briefly. This one was using music. Strange, haunting notes played on instruments she had never seen before. It was beautiful, she had to admit. But the throne remained dark. She turned back to the floor patterns. The symbols led her closer to the throne now. Not directly toward it, but in a spiral path that slowly closed in. Each step brought her nearer to the center of the chamber. The patterns changed as she got closer. They became more complex, more layered. She noticed that different sections seemed to represent different concepts. One area showed symbols of growth. Another showed change. A third showed unity and resilience. That symbol appeared more than any other. The ability to bend without breaking, to fall and get back up, to face impossible odds and keep going anyway. Humans were good at that too. Maybe better than they were at anything else. They were not the strongest species in the galaxy. Not the smartest. Not the fastest or the longest lived. But they were resilient. They could adapt to almost anything. They could survive in places that should have killed them. They could thrive in situations that would have destroyed others. The music stopped. There was polite applause. Another failure. Hana barely noticed. She was focused on the floor, following the patterns to their conclusion. They spiraled in and in, getting tighter and tighter, until finally they ended right at the base of the throne. She stood there, looking up at the massive crystal chair. From this close, she could see new details. The patterns carved into its surface were even more intricate than she had realized. They seemed to go deep into the crystal itself, layer upon layer of complexity. The chamber felt different from here, quieter somehow, even with all the people present. The lights seemed softer. The air felt still. It was like standing in the eye of a storm, that moment of perfect calm before everything changes. Another delegate was approaching the throne. Hana realized she was in the way. She should move. She should go back to her spot near the wall. But her feet felt heavy. Her legs were tired from walking and crouching to examine the floor patterns, and the throne was right there. Just a chair, she thought. Just an old chair. What harm could it do if she sat down for just a moment? Hana did not really think about what she was doing. She was tired. Her legs hurt. The throne was there, empty, waiting. She took one step forward, then another. Nobody seemed to notice. Everyone was watching the new delegate preparing their ritual at the front of the chamber. The seat of the throne was at just the right height. Hana turned around and sat down. The crystal was cool against her back, comfortable despite being made of stone. She let out a small sigh of relief and closed her eyes for just a moment. Then the world changed. It started as a vibration, so small that at first Hana thought she was imagining it. But it grew stronger. The throne began to hum, a low sound deep in her bones, not unpleasant, almost musical. Then the light came. It started in the patterns carved into the throne, a faint blue glow that spread like water flowing uphill. The light traced every line, every symbol, every curve carved into the crystal. Within seconds, the entire throne was glowing. Not bright enough to hurt her eyes, but impossible to ignore. The chamber fell silent. Every voice stopped. Every movement ceased. All eyes turned toward the throne. Toward her, the light did not stop at the throne. It spread outward, following lines carved into the floor that Hana had traced earlier. The patterns she had followed now blazed with that same blue light. They spread across the floor like lightning frozen in stone, connecting the throne to every part of the chamber. Then the walls began to wake. Veins of light ran up from the floor, climbing the walls like vines growing in fast motion. They reached the ceiling and spread across it in complex webs. The entire chamber was lighting up. After thousands of years of darkness, the ancient structure was coming alive. Hana tried to stand up. This was too much. This was not supposed to happen. She was just sitting down for a moment. But the throne held her gently, not forcefully, not trapping her. Just a gentle pressure, like a hand on her shoulder saying, "Wait." The humming grew louder. The chamber began to shake. Not violently, but noticeably. Dust fell from the ceiling. Some of the portable lights the archaeologists had set up flickered and went out. They were not needed anymore. The chamber was providing its own light now. People were shouting. Hana could hear voices calling out in a dozen different languages. Some sounded excited. Others sounded afraid. She heard Deho's voice somewhere calling her name. She wanted to respond but could not find her voice. The patterns on the floor were doing something new. The light was not just glowing. It was moving, flowing in specific directions, creating images. Hana looked down and saw shapes forming in the light. Stars, planets, ships traveling between them. The same images that had been carved on the walls but now alive and in motion. And then, right in front of the throne, a figure appeared. It was made of light. Pure blue light in a shape that was almost but not quite human. Tall, elegant, with features that were hard to focus on. It looked like a memory of a person rather than an actual person. A ghost made of photons instead of spirit. The figure did not speak. Not with words. But Hana heard it anyway. Inside her head, a voice that was not a voice. "Welcome," the figure said. "We have waited so long." Hana found her voice finally. Her hands gripped the armrests of the throne. "Who are you?" she asked. "What is this?" The figure seemed to smile, though its face did not really change. "I am a recording, an echo of those who built this place, the precursors as you call us. We are long gone, but we left this throne, and we left a message." Around her, Hana could hear more shouting. The delegates were crowding forward now, pushing against the ropes that had been set up to keep them back. Everyone wanted to see. Everyone wanted to hear. Security guards were trying to maintain order, but even they seemed too shocked to do their jobs properly. "Why me?" Hana asked. "Why now? Thousands have tried to activate this throne. Why did it respond to me?" The figure gestured, and more images appeared in the light around them. Hana saw the Keltorian performing his ritual, the Ven singing their song, all the delegates who had tried before, and she saw what the throne had seen. People trying to prove they were worthy, people trying to earn the right to sit, people trying to pass a test, but that was not the test, the figure said. The throne does not want worthiness. It does not want rituals or ceremonies. Those are mortal concerns. The precursors understood something that was forgotten over time. Power should not go to those who seek it most. Power should go to those who do not realize they are seeking it at all. "You sat without asking permission," the figure continued. "You sat because you were tired. Because the chair was there. Because in that moment you saw it not as a throne, but as a place to rest. That is what we waited for. Someone who would approach with no agenda. No ambition, no grand plan. Hana felt tears on her cheeks. She had not realized she was crying. This was too much, too big. She was just a diplomat, just a person from Earth trying to do her job. She was not special. She was not a hero. That is exactly why you were chosen, the figure said, as if reading her thoughts. Because you do not think you are special. Your species understands something that many have forgotten. You understand that greatness is not about being perfect. It is about trying anyway. Failing anyway. Getting back up anyway. More images appeared. Hana saw Earth, saw human history. The wars, the disasters. The near extinctions. But also the rebuilding. The peace treaties. The first steps into space. The first contact with alien life. Humanity stumbling forward, making mistakes, learning, growing. We waited for a species that knew failure, the figure said. Because only those who have failed truly understand the value of success. Only those who have been afraid truly understand courage. Only those who have been lost truly understand the importance of finding the way home. The chamber shook again, harder this time. Hana heard something cracking. Not breaking, but opening. Sections of the walls were moving, sliding apart to reveal spaces behind them, spaces that had been sealed for thousands of years. The throne is yours now, the figure said. Not just yours personally, but your species, your people. You have proven what we needed proven, that there still exists in this galaxy beings who can act without calculation, who can choose without agenda, who can lead without demanding to be followed. The light began to fade, not going out but settling, becoming stable. The throne still glowed but softer now. The patterns on the floor still shone but gentler. The chamber was still awake but calm, and Hana still sat on the throne, her heart pounding, her mind racing, knowing that nothing would ever be the same again. For a long moment nobody moved. The chamber was silent except for the gentle hum of the awakened throne. Then chaos erupted. Delegates rushed forward, all talking at once. Some were excited, shouting questions in their native languages. Others were angry, demanding to know why the human had succeeded where they had failed. Still others seemed afraid, backing away from the glowing throne as if it might explode. Security guards formed a circle around Hana and the throne, trying to keep everyone back. But even they looked confused. Nobody had prepared for this. Nobody had really expected the throne to activate at all. Through the crowd, Hana saw her crewmates fighting their way forward. Woojin was in front, using his size to push through. Behind him came Daeho, Sora, Yuna, and Jiho. They looked worried. They looked scared for her. "Are you hurt?" Sora called out as soon as she was close enough. "Can you move? Can you stand?" Hana tested her legs. The throne was no longer holding her. She could move if she wanted to. But part of her was afraid to stand up. Afraid that if she left the seat, the lights would go out again. Afraid that this moment would end and she would never understand what it meant. "I am okay," Hana said. Her voice came out quieter than she meant it to. "I am not hurt. I just need a minute." Daeho reached the inner circle and spoke quietly to one of the security guards. After a moment, they let him through. He approached the throne carefully, his eyes taking in everything. The lights, the patterns, the walls that had opened to reveal hidden chambers. "What happened?" Daeho asked. "Tell me everything," Hana tried to explain. About following the patterns on the floor. About sitting down without thinking. About the voice that was not a voice. About what the figure had told her. It all sounded crazy when she said it out loud, but Daeho just nodded, listening carefully. Behind them, Kelmar the archaeologist was shouting orders. His team was setting up new equipment, trying to record everything that was happening. Other scientists were carefully approaching the opened wall sections, peering into the spaces that had been revealed. Yuna came closer, her scanner out and beeping rapidly. "Captain," she said, looking at the readings, "the energy output from this throne is incredible. And it is not just the throne. The entire structure is active now. There are systems running all through this chamber that we could not detect before." "What kind of systems?" Daeho asked. "I do not know yet, but they are complex, really complex. This is not just a throne, it is some kind of interface, a control center maybe." As if responding to Yuna's words, the air above the throne shimmered. Images began to form. Not the light figure from before. These were different. They looked like screens made of light floating in the air. Dozens of them. Hundreds maybe. Each screen showed something different. Star maps, technical diagrams, Streams of symbols that might be text in some unknown language. Some showed images of places Hana did not recognize. Ancient buildings on distant worlds. Structures floating in space. Machines the size of planets. Jiho had his data pad out, frantically trying to record everything. "This is incredible," he breathed. "These are precursor sites. Locations of their technology. Sites that have never been found. Some of these places I do not think they are even in this galaxy." One of the screens drifted closer to Hana. She could see it more clearly now. It showed a planet she recognized. Earth, her home. But the view was changing, zooming out, showing the solar system. Then the local cluster of stars. Then farther, showing Earth's position in the galaxy. And from that view, lines extended outward, connecting to other points. Other locations. It was a network. A vast network of precursor sites spread across the galaxy and beyond. And Earth, humanity's home, was now connected to all of it. The voice returned. Not the figure this time. Just the voice speaking inside Hana's mind. She wondered if the others could hear it too. "The network has been dormant for 3,000 years, the voice said. Waiting for a caretaker. Waiting for someone to accept responsibility for maintaining it. For protecting it. For ensuring that the knowledge it contains is used wisely." "What kind of knowledge?" Hana asked out loud. The others looked at her strangely, and she realized they could not hear the voice. Only she could. "Everything," the voice replied. "The sum of precursor science. Our history. Our mistakes. Our successes. Technologies that could transform your civilization. Or destroy it if misused. That is why we waited so long. That is why the test was not about strength or intelligence or ceremony. We needed to find beings who understood responsibility, who knew that power without wisdom is disaster, who could be trusted not just to take but to give." Hana felt the weight of those words. The implications were staggering. This was not just about sitting on an old chair. This was about becoming guardians of knowledge that could change everything, about accepting a role that humanity had never asked for. "I cannot make this decision alone," Hana said. "This is too big, too important. My people, my government, they should be involved. The whole galaxy should be involved." The voice seemed pleased by this response. "That is exactly why you were chosen. You understand that some decisions are too large for one person. That leadership is not about taking control, but about bringing others together." The screens in the air began to change. New images appeared. Instructions maybe, or offers. Hana could not tell for sure. But she felt something in the back of her mind. A sense that she could access this information if she wanted to. That the throne was offering her a connection to everything it contained, but she did not take it. Not yet. Because the voice was right. This was not a decision she should make alone. This was something that needed discussion, debate, input from people much smarter and more experienced than her. Around the chamber, the initial panic was settling into organized chaos. Scientists were setting up equipment. Diplomats were making emergency calls to their homeworlds. Guards were trying to establish a proper security perimeter. Everyone was doing something, even if nobody was quite sure what they should be doing. Daeho was watching her carefully. "Can you stand?" he asked. "We should probably get you out of here. This place is going to be very busy very soon." Hana nodded. Slowly, carefully, she stood up from the throne. As soon as she did, the screens in the air flickered and faded. But the lights in the chamber remained. The throne still glowed. The patterns on the floor and walls still shone with that soft blue light. It was still active. Still awake. Still waiting, but now it was waiting with purpose. Because finally, after 3,000 years, the throne had found what it was looking for. Not a ruler. Not a master. But a caretaker. Someone who understood that the greatest power was not in taking, but in sharing. Not in commanding, but in asking. Not in being worthy, but in accepting that none of us truly are, and trying anyway. 3 days later, Hana stood in a conference room on the orbital station above Karo 7th. The room was packed. Representatives from every major civilization in the galaxy had come. Some had traveled for days to be here. Others had sent holographic avatars, their images shimmering at the edges of the room. Everyone wanted answers. Everyone had opinions. And many of them were not happy that a human, a species barely a few centuries into space travel, had been chosen as guardians of precursor technology. The Keltorian ambassador was speaking now. His forearms gestured dramatically as he made his point. With all due respect to our human colleagues, he said, his voice carrying across the room, this is unprecedented. The precursors were wise beyond measure. Surely they intended for a more experienced species to inherit their legacy. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. Hana sat at the main table with Deho beside her. She had not slept much in the past 3 days. There had been too many meetings, too many questions, too many people who wanted to know what she had experienced on the throne. A Ven delegate spoke next, their gaseous form pulsing with colors that indicated agitation. The humans are newcomers to galactic society. They do not understand our ways, our histories. How can they be trusted with knowledge that could affect us all? More voices joined in, some supportive, most skeptical, a few outright hostile. Hana listened to them all, feeling the weight of their words. They were not entirely wrong. Humanity was young compared to most galactic civilizations. Inexperienced, prone to mistakes. But that was exactly what the throne had wanted. That was what the precursors had understood. Sometimes experience becomes rigidity. Sometimes wisdom becomes fear of change. When there was a pause in the arguments, Hana stood up. The room fell quiet. Everyone wanted to hear what she would say. You are right, she began. Her voice was steady, despite the nervousness she felt. Humans are young. We are inexperienced. We have made terrible mistakes in our short history, wars that should never have been fought, damage to our own planet that we are still trying to repair, division among our own people that sometimes seems impossible to heal. She paused, looking around the room. We are not perfect. We are not the wisest. We are not the strongest. And I think that is exactly why the throne chose us. Some of the delegates shifted uncomfortably. Others leaned forward, interested in spite of themselves. The precursors did not want perfection, Hana continued. They wanted humility. They wanted someone who would not assume they had all the answers. Someone who would ask for help instead of demanding obedience. Someone who understood that the greatest strength is not in being right, but in being willing to learn. A Durathi representative spoke up, her stone-like features showing surprise. Are you saying that humanity admits it cannot handle this responsibility alone? Yes, Hana said simply. That is exactly what I am saying. We cannot do this alone. We should not do this alone, and we do not want to do this alone. She pulled up a holographic display, showing the network of precursor sites that the throne had revealed. There are locations here from one edge of the galaxy to the other. Technologies beyond anything we currently understand. Knowledge that could benefit everyone or harm everyone, depending on how it is used. No single species should control that. Not humans. Not anyone. What we are proposing is a council. A shared guardianship. Representatives from every willing civilization, working together to study these sites, to understand this knowledge, and to decide together how it should be shared. The room erupted in conversation. Some delegates were nodding. Others were arguing with their neighbors. The Keltorian ambassador stood up again. This is unusual, he said slowly. Most species who gain such power seek to keep it, to control it. You are offering to share it? Yes, Hana replied. Why? Because that is what humans do best. Not fighting alone, not standing apart, but bringing people together, finding common ground, building bridges where others see only walls. She looked around the room at all the different species represented there. You all have strengths that we lack, experience we do not have, wisdom we have not earned, and we have something to offer too. Not superiority, not dominance, but the willingness to try something new, to fail if necessary, to get back up and try again. Deho stood up beside her. If I may add something, he said. The captain's voice carried authority but also warmth. I have served with this crew for 5 years. With humans and non-humans both. I have seen how we work together, how we learn from each other, how we become stronger by combining our different perspectives. That is what this council could be, not humans leading while others follow, but all of us leading together, all of us learning together, all of us responsible together. A long silence followed. Then slowly the Keltorian ambassador nodded. I will recommend this to my government, he said. It is not the answer I expected, but perhaps that is the point. Perhaps the precursors knew that the unexpected answer is sometimes the right one. Other delegates began to speak up. Most agreed to bring the proposal back to their homeworlds. Some remained skeptical, but even they admitted that the idea had merit. The conversation shifted from whether humans should be guardians to how the council should be structured, what rules it should have, how decisions would be made. It took 6 more days of negotiations, 6 days of arguments and compromises, 6 days of finding common ground where none seemed to exist. But in the end, they had an agreement, a framework for the council, a charter that every species could sign. The ceremony was held in the chamber with the throne. They had cleaned it up since the initial chaos, set up proper equipment, made it presentable. But the throne still glowed. The patterns still shone. The chamber remembered what it had been built for. One by one, the representatives came forward to sign the charter. Keltorians and Ven, Durathi and Norvani, Selkari and dozens of others, each one adding their name to the document that would govern how precursor knowledge was handled. When it was Hana's turn, she approached the throne one more time. She did not sit. That was not necessary now. But she placed her hand on the armrest, feeling the cool crystal beneath her palm. The voice came again, quiet and warm. You have done well. This is what we hoped for. Not dominion, but cooperation. Not power, but partnership. The throne is yours, but you have chosen to share it. That is wisdom beyond your years. Thank you, Hana whispered. No, the voice replied. Thank you. All of you. For proving that the galaxy still has room for hope. For showing that different beings can work together toward a common goal. The precursors are gone, but their dream lives on in what you are building here. The ceremony concluded with little fanfare. There were speeches, of course. There were promises and declarations. But the real work would come later. Years of study, decades of careful exploration, centuries maybe of learning to use precursor knowledge wisely. As the crowd dispersed, Hana found herself standing with her crew. Daiho, Yuna, Jiho, Wujin, and Sora. They had all been there from the beginning. They had all seen what happened. Think we did okay? Wujin asked with a slight smile. Hana looked back at the throne, still glowing softly in the center of the chamber. I think we did what we could. What we were supposed to do. Not because we were perfect. Not because we had all the answers. But because we were willing to try. That is very human of us, Sora said. Yes, Hana agreed. It is. They left the chamber together, heading back to their ship. There was work to do. The first council meeting to prepare for. Teams to organize. Sites to explore. A whole galaxy of precursor mysteries waiting to be understood. Behind them, the throne sat in its chamber. No longer lost. No longer waiting. It had found what it needed. Not a single heir. Not one perfect guardian. But a galaxy of beings willing to work together. Willing to learn from each other. Willing to share responsibility for something greater than themselves. The lights stayed on. The patterns kept glowing. The chamber remained awake. Because after 3,000 years of darkness, the lost throne had accepted not an heir, but something better. A family, a community, a galaxy full of beings who understood that the greatest power was not in ruling alone, but in leading together. And that was exactly what the precursors had been waiting for all along.